Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Maazi Ezeoke's Hangout today. This evening, I will be having a one-on-one conversation with a man many of you know so well. A man who has been an advocate of social justice, a man who has been an advocate of civil rights and right abuse. I speak to no other man than the man that many of you, like I said before, know pretty very well. My guest today to still review and dive deeper into the news that we have read and as it surrounds the presidential candidate of the All Progressive candidate in the person of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. This evening, in order to deepen the conversation, to understand what has happened, and also to offer an insider perspective, I have with me here Barrister Emeka Ugwuonye, principal partner at Ekulaw. Barrister Emeka Ugwuonye, as many of you will know and still remember, had in the past, within this time frame, represented the Nigerian government in the United States for over 10 years. This evening, I have him here to throw some light into this case as it stands today. Barrister, you're welcome to Njenje Media TV.
Thank you very much.
Now, let us quickly dive and look into this matter. What is it that you are going to tell Nigerian audience and the world today from your perspective as a lawyer who had worked in the United States of America within the time in question and for many years? With your experience, do you think that the document that Nigerians had seen is anything to write home about? Is that something that should worry them? And what is your perspective on all this that has happened so far?
Well, the documents being circulated is a record of trial, forfeiture proceedings in the United States against the current presidential candidate for APC, Ahmed Tinubu. The surprising thing, or rather what I would like to point out, and which seems to be fairly agreed by everybody, is that the forfeiture proceeding against Tinubu was based on the conclusion by the United States Justice Department that there was a crime, that there was a criminal conduct, and monies were proceeds of a criminal conduct. And that money was what was forfeited by Tinubu. Nigerians have to understand that forfeiture proceedings do not occur if there is no crime. If the Justice Department did not come to the conclusion that there was a crime and the crime resulted in some money and that the money was in possession of Tinubu, there would be no forfeiture. You don't forfeit money that you earned legitimately. What the United States government does, and I believe some countries do that, is they have a choice. They see proceeds of crime, they can get everybody involved in it, prosecuted and sent to prison if convicted, or they may simply say, let's take the money away from them. Take that money away from them. And when they commence such forfeiture proceedings, if indeed there was no crime, if the money was legitimately earned, if the money was defensible, if you can explain how you came about that money, you will not forfeit the money. You will go forward, explain yourself, establish that you earned this money legitimately, that there was no crime committed, and you keep your money. So forfeiture proceedings is an opportunity given to a suspect to leave the money and run. Leave the money and run, otherwise we're going to try you. And those who run are people who believe that should a trial occur, they will likely be convicted. So Tinubu forfeited 460-something thousand in 1993. A long time ago, almost 30 years ago. So the value of that money today is significant. And remember, this occurred before Tinubu became a governor. So you can't say, well, he was too rich, that he didn't care about that money. For him to forfeit that amount of money 30 years ago tells you that he had something to fear. So there is no way anybody could look at what happened and think it could be explained in any sensible manner that would be favorable to Tinubu. So it was clearly an option. The United States Justice Department, Treasury Department, because it's very important also to know that the forfeiture proceeding in Tinubu's case came through Treasury Department. So they found illegal money. They found money process of crime. Now, it wasn't owing taxes. It wasn't a case of owing taxes.
You know, so, when you listen to Festus Kayamo, the spokesperson of the APC, he would tell you that that money was as a result of taxes not paid. So that forfeiting that money meant rather than prosecute for that tax that was not paid, then that money will be used to pay that tax. Is there any element of truth, as someone who has lived and practiced in the United States of America, is there any truth in such a narrative?
No, Mr. Campbell was absolutely wrong. That was not what happened. You must know that for you to pay tax, you must have had income. What income did Tinubu make from which he could have owed taxes? No. You see, if in the United States you earn money, but fail to pay taxes on that money, United States could seize your money from pay taxes. But when it's a case of tax, there will also be a clear indication of the income you earned for which you failed to pay taxes. That never happened. Indeed, what happened in Tinubu's case was that they believed that the money was proceeds of drug-related business. Now, whether it meant that Tinubu was directly involved in drugs, we don't know. But the critical thing is, when it comes to criminal responsibility, there are several positions a person could occupy. Either you are the principal perpetrator, or you are aiding perpetrators, or you are holding their money, or you are doing something which could put you in prison if prosecuted. And instead of pursuing prosecution, you are asked to forfeit. And he chose to forfeit. But make no mistake about it, the forfeiture was in relation to funds believed to have been proceeds of criminal conduct. So he had an option. If there was no criminal conduct, he wouldn't forfeit that money. And when somebody says, well, it is tax, that's also nonsensical. To forfeit that amount of money for tax for somebody who was not even a United States citizen, who was not at that time working for the United States. So how did the money come about? And by the way, what you do when you owe taxes, you pay tax. Your money will be taken in place of tax you owed. That means you've just paid your taxes. It's not called forfeiture in that sense. He would have just paid taxes. He didn't pay tax. Money was found in his bank account, believed to be proceeds of crime. The government weighed its options rather than putting him through a jury trial, which could take time and money. He's willing to just let the money go. That was what happened. So what Keyamo is doing is nonsense. If they wanted really an intelligent, convincing explanation, what they needed to do was to give us a legal opinion written by an American lawyer. Keyamo knows nothing about American law. That is, if he knows even about Nigerian law. Keyamo knows nothing about American law. He's not in a position to explain the legal implications of the forfeiture. So Keyamo is just, as you described, somebody, a spokesperson who is there to whitewash and clean up any negative story about his principle. But speaking of law, an innocent man who has not committed a crime will not forfeit the United States government the whooping amount of $460,000 in 1993, 29 years ago. It doesn't make sense, sir.
Okay, now if we look at these documents, actually, I would bring in some clip from Keyamo for you to also respond to. But before I do that, the question that is in the lips of everyone is, yes, these monies were forfeited, but actually, according to that document, Tinubu was earning in the region of $2,000, up slightly above $2,000 at that point. Now, how come that someone who was earning that amount will be in a position of a couple of millions in the account, in his own account? And is it, right? Is it possible for someone to actually have multiple accounts? In this case, I think about 10 accounts. Does it mean that when you have such multiple accounts, does it indicate something fishy actually happening? Does that sound to you in that manner?
Indeed, you just pointed out the issue. You just eliminate this explanation. He was earning far too little to owe taxes worth $460,000. You see, your tax is just a fraction of what you earn. His individual tax would have been an individual tax bracket of maybe between 18 and 27% of his income. So forget the issue of tax. Any theory of tax is just nonsensical, because Tinubu in the United States never earned enough money to be able to owe that amount in taxes. So it was believed that there was crime involved. And as part of the theory of the US government was the multiplicity of accounts consistent with people in a particular type of criminal conduct, drug peddling. As I said before, I am not aware that Tinubu was charged with the offense of drug peddling. I don't want to subscribe to that theory. But as we know, the government looked at his conduct. The amount of funds he had was not explainable. It was not justified by his legitimate income. The number of accounts, bank accounts he was maintaining, again, was not justified by the circumstances of his life, if legitimate, which was he was working, he was earning money. Why would you be running all these accounts? However, if you were involved in distribution of illicit drug, there would be need to disguise funds, to spread out funds in different accounts and maintain these different accounts. So the United States government saw that as a sign that that type of crime, drug-related crime, was being conducted. So put yourself in the position of a government prosecutor in the United States. When you suspect someone, you have to take into consideration everything, and things that don't make sense to an ordinary person will begin to make sense in the context of the theory of a crime being committed. So 10 bank accounts in the United States run by a man that earns $2,000 per month, and having together this amount of money was something troubling. And the fact that he was able to forfeit it, that's something people don't understand. The fact that he was going to let that money go, you ask yourself, what was he avoiding? What would have happened if he came forward to explain and defend that money? So he had a reason for letting the money go. And that thing was, should he challenge the government theory that a crime has been committed? Should he say, no, I'm an innocent man, I earned this money, I did this work, I inherited this money from my parents, or I did this consultancy services, and this firm paid me? If he could say so, he would not have forfeited it. He would have said, well, it's all my money. And they say, okay, very well, if you earn this 460,000, pay taxes on it, and your taxes should maybe 100,000 or 150,000, he would pay. So forfeiting that amount of money is the smoking gun. It is evidence that you yourself, you are convinced that you could be successfully prosecuted and convicted if they pursue it. United States government are very smart. They saw this guy, a foreigner, he came and did all these things, you know, and by the way, by the time we are doing this, you know, he's no longer posing an immediate threat. All we've got is this money. Let's take the money. They took the money and let the rascals go. By the way, let me ask you, let me emphasize, even in Nigeria, looking at EFCC proceedings, EFCC uses forfeiture of assets as part of its law enforcement activities. They never go to any court seeking to forfeit any asset without establishing to the satisfaction of the court some prima facie theory that a crime has been committed. It doesn't matter the forfeiture proceeding, whether it is forfeiture as we are witnessing in the case of Ekwaramadu or any other forfeiture proceeding pursued by the EFCC. The underlying theory is that these properties being forfeited are proceeds of crime. So that is a universal theory. And by the way, there is a difference between seizure and forfeiture. I have to emphasize this. There is a difference when a government seizes your assets, as is happening in the United Kingdom against the assets of Russian tycoons. Government can seize your assets. In that case, the basis for acting to seize your assets is not because of a crime. When you forfeit, it means you signed away. You agreed. You just proceeded, and so Tinubu forfeited their assets. They gave him the opportunity. They'll come in and say, hey, we believe that this money is proceeds of crime.
So
However,
in a layman's, let's put it this way, in a layman's language, it means that the moment forfeiture occurs, it is an admittance that something has already happened. It is an admittance of guilty. Is that what you're trying to, insinuate?
Absolutely. The paperwork they will ask you to sign will say it. To forfeit that, Tinubu had to sign, or his lawyers had to sign. No. His lawyers will give it to him to sign. And that document will tell you that you don't have to sign it. If you believe that we are wrong, if you think we are wrong, you don't have to sign it. But in that case, we will proceed against you criminally.
Okay, let's listen to.
So, and his lawyer, hold on, this is very important. Let me give you a scenario how this works. Because if we talk about it this way, many may not understand it. First, you are being investigated. You are asked to answer questions. You contact your lawyers. You engage lawyers. Your lawyers contact the government. They read all these things the government says, and then series of meetings and exchanges of communication will occur. And they will say to you, through your lawyer, we believe a crime has been committed. This is the basis for that belief. This is our theory. This is our evidence. We can pursue it. However, if your client can just forfeit the money, we'll let him go. Also, it could have been Tinubu's own lawyers that requested for forfeiture. That's what people don't know. Tinubu's own lawyers could look at these things and come to him and say, hey, the government has got something hard on you. It could be messy if they proceed to trial. They've got strong evidence, but maybe we can ask them to give us the option of forfeiture. And based on that, Tinubu's lawyers will approach the US government lawyers and say, hey, let our clients have the option of forfeiture. And they wait, they look at it, say, wow, money for the US government? Instead of the money in the pocket of the criminals or the suspects, the US could just hold that money. And based on that, paperwork will be prepared. The forfeiture document will be prepared. In which case, because they don't want you to forfeit today and then go on appeal or go and sue them or come back tomorrow and say you did not forfeit, there are procedures meant to ensure that you understood what was happening, you understood what the options are, you wanted to avoid these other options, that you deliberately, advisedly, and cautiously chose forfeiture in order to avoid this option. And you will check all the boxes. Yes, yes, yes. And sign off at that moment. And by the way, Tinubu must have been advised by lawyers. The amount of money forfeited was so much, he must have been advised by lawyers. So those lawyers must have advised him that it was in his interest to forfeit, to sign off the forfeiture. So it's not as simple as people make it sound, as if he was just walking and somebody came and sat next to him on a bench in a park and said, hey man, forfeit this stuff or go home. And no. Lawyers were involved. No lawyer would tell his client to forfeit money if that lawyer can defend against the case the government is about to bring against his client. So Tinubu was advised by lawyers better informed than Kiamu. Those lawyers knew the law of the United States better than Kiamu would ever have known in his life. So those lawyers understood that Tinubu would go to jail if he did not forfeit. They must have had that conclusion. There is no other consequence strong enough to justify the forfeiture of that amount of money. Anything else, they would have gone against forfeiture. So those lawyers analyzed the case, analyzed the evidence, analyzed the strategy and determination of the government of the United States, and felt that it was in the best interest of their client for him to let the money go and run for his life than for him to come and haggle and argue and try to establish the source of the. If Tinubu could justify the source of the money, he will not, his lawyers will not ask him to forfeit it. No. So always remember that Tinubu had the benefit of the best lawyers in Chicago, the jurisdiction where this arose. And also what people don't know, and which is not featuring in this case, is that around that same time, many Nigerians in the Chicago area were involved in drug-related issue. And these were the same team. I know this because I came across situations where those Nigerians involved, if you remember the senator now dead, who was also involved, implicated, Nigerian senator, which was the US was trying to extradite him. So these
Senator
were the
Kushemo.
same area, the same period, the same kind of people. So, and if you recall, at some point, people were calling each other names and mentioning Tinubu here and there. These things don't drop from the sky. It's just that the level of investigation and research done in this case is very narrow. Otherwise, you have to go back around that time, check cases involving Nigerians in the Chicago area, drug-related matters. So now, maybe, as I indicated, since he was not charged, we don't know what the charge would have been. We don't know whether it would have been that he was the ringleader, or he was their treasurer, or he was just somebody that supported him somehow and kept money. We don't know that. I am not going to tell you that we know that. But one thing I do know is that the forfeiture occurred because the United States government believed that the money was process of crime, not tax. Anybody talking of tax, as Kayami is talking, is just saying utter nonsense. That's not, forfeiture is not the proceeding for tax evasion, non-payment of tax. That's not what he would have gone through, being a foreigner, not having a lot of money, earning 2,000 plus. There was no basis for him to accumulate the money. That is actually what it is. They found money you cannot explain. They found money that can only be explained in the context of crime. Who has this money? Do you want to explain to us how you got this money? We suspect you of this and that, and we can pursue that, but we will just let you go if you can just leave the money and run away. US likes to get money from people, you know, and they got it from him. A bigger issue is this. This is something Nigerians ought to be thinking about. Nobody is perfect. People make mistakes in their lives. But when you start becoming the president of a country, when you want to become the president of a country, you should understand the implications of certain things in your past. The United States government has a whole lot of information on anybody that have gone through this kind of forfeiture proceeding. They have so much. They exercise their discretion and not to prosecute people all the time. In this case, they exercise discretion. So when you become the president of Nigeria, and you have this sort of record against you in the United States government, it affects you in a serious way. And by the way, US can still prosecute you anytime. There's no statute bar to crime, majorly.
But not on a case of forfeiture where there is a closure.
No, well, you see, it depends on how the prosecutor defines this crime. And I am sure that if we have all the documents, Tinubu's lawyers would have wanted to clearly itemize the offenses that was being waived, because a forfeiture in the context of crime amounts to a plea bargain of sorts. They want to make sure the deal is understood. If he forfeits this money, you will not pursue him on this and this and that. But the interesting thing about framing offenses is that the prosecutor can devise other offenses. They can just do so. So when you have had that sort of thing in the United States and you escape by way of forfeiture, indeed, it would have actually been better to be tried, convicted, and you serve your term, and you come out and run for the president of Nigeria. So if they bring up that thing, you say, well, I was tried, I paid my dues, I knew what it was about. When it is forfeiture, that means things are done in secrecy, wrapped up, concealed, so you are not fully exposed. The implication is this: If you are the president of a country, any country, and you come to the United States for any purpose, or you're engaging in international operations, and they have this sort of record about you, it could be problematic. Can you imagine what happens to President Tinubu sitting in his office, and United States government wants him to do something in the interest of America, which is not in the interest of the United States? It's very simple. Just send a few agents. A diplomat meets him and says, Mr. President, we have this document we think you should look at. And the President Tinubu opens this file, and it contains the kind of worms that have been suppressed over time. Then President Tinubu will probably say, okay, what do you want? What do I do? You don't want that sort of situation. But another thing I must say, so I will have to be fair to Tinubu, is that the same thing, similar thing applies to Atiku as well. Yes, similar thing. In that of Atiku, I was even very far more personally involved. It was more recent. I knew. In Tinubu's case, Siemens pleaded guilty to U.S. Justice Department that they gave bribe to Tinubu through his wife.
No, you mean Atiku here.
Correction. Siemens pleaded guilty to the charge that they gave bribe to Atiku through Atiku's wife. For Siemens to plead guilty, you have to understand what it means. Of course, Atiku wasn't prosecuted over it. We know, but the critical issue is you've got, for Nigeria, leading candidates in presidential election who are people the United States government probably has some nasty skeletons in their cupboard. So when we talk about that Tinubu, let us be fair. I say that Atiku is not better off on that, really, in terms of what the United States government could have.
Okay.
But any notion that the forfeiture of $460,000 in 1993 was
for tax.
Well, for tax, that's totally wrong. Okay. That's totally wrong. You know?
Now, you said something that I want to really, every Nigerian watching us now should be wary of something you said here. You said clearly that electing such people into office could lead to Nigerian being blackmailed if such an individual occupies the office of the president.
Obviously, it is so basic. What we are seeing with these stories of Tinubu, Atiku, and all these things is so terrible. It means Nigeria is a cursed nation. The people you are putting forward to lead this country are people that puts the country in ridicule. I know how the international system works. The diplomatic circle is full of gossip people don't realize. If your president is a drunkard, other presidents know, they talk about that. If your president is a womanizer, they know, they talk about that. If your president is a guy with a shady past, they know, they talk about that. If your president forfeited $460,000 in 1993 at a time when he had nothing, that tells people a whole lot. People in Europe, people anywhere in the world. The unfortunate thing is that we Nigerians, we seem not to care. We seem not to understand how the international system works. We don't seem not to understand things like the integrity of the leaders you put forward. So this is the best Nigeria offers the world. Tinubu and Atiku, the best Nigeria gives the world. That tells you, you offer Nigeria devil's alternative. You are saying to the whole world, this great country, Nigeria, can only produce these two men. And you put them forward, the best of the country. And people know all these things. That is terrible. That is terrible for the country. I pity Nigeria, really. And as I said, it's not unique to Tinubu. Many Nigerian politicians are involved in some sort of forfeiture or the other. The Senator Namani of Enugu is facing one in the United States. Now, many people, and Uba face forfeiture at some point. Many of them, they find themselves in an awkward position, and the US government knows what to do. Take their money. Take their money. So, but
now,
if you go through that, you have to understand that you are suffering an impairment in integrity. You are suffering an impairment people wouldn't forget. And tomorrow, when you sit down there and moralize as one of the leaders of the world, those who want good things for the world, you have this past, unexplained past. And all you are doing is to bring an ignorant man, Keamu. When I say ignorant man, Keamu doesn't know anything about United States law. If anybody had to explain the position of the law in the United States relating to forfeiture, it cannot be Keamu. Keamu should have been referring us to legal opinion written by a Chicago-based lawyer who is familiar with what happened, who understands the significance legally of what happened. So, but that's what they brought Keamu to tell the world how the United States forfeiture laws operate. And people are buying it. So it is a big problem for our country, I can tell you. And it took years in making, because Tinubu and Atiku didn't just become candidates. They didn't just come out of nowhere. These were men who grew through the political system in Nigeria in the past 20 years. And that tells you how badly off our country is, that our bests are these men. That's what we hold out as our best.
Now, in trying to play down the severity of what we are discussing, Keyamo made it very clear that his principal is not even a defendant in that case. Many people have called that laughable. But just for the benefit of this, let's quickly listen to this soundbite from Keyamo, and I would want to have your response to this.
At the detractors and the PDP and his people, perhaps that's what they went to the US for, when they pretended that they went to for high-level engagement. This is part of the high-level engagements they went for, just to go and, deceive Nigerians and bring out washed-out papers that are totally dead as dodo. They brought them back to Nigerians, and they said freshly issued court papers in the US. They are not freshly issued. They have just been certified by the US court. But then go into those documents. Let's go into those documents. What happened? Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was not even a defendant in that case. That will shock you, right? It will shock you. But go back to the documents. It was an action in rem, not an action in personam. For those who are law students or who are not lawyers, let me explain. An action in rem is an action where you proceed against properties, not against the person. So what they did at that time was that they proceeded against certain accounts. And those accounts bore companies that were linked to Bola Tinubu or the ones personally held by him. Those accounts were 10 accounts in 3 banks. 10 accounts, so let me repeat, 10 different accounts in 3 different banks. Accounts legitimately opened by him, opened, in normal procedure by him. They didn't find any problem with that. And there were funds that he kept saving, where he was keeping his savings in the US. So, as I speak with you,
now, let me allow you to respond to this, because the moment you hear funds he was saving in the US, and this is a man who was earning 2,400 or thereabout, saved up to, from 2,000, sitting down listening to that, it felt like when Jesus Christ did the miracle with the 5 loaves of bread and fish, suddenly something ballooned and turned into millions. And here is the spokesperson talking about him not being a mentioned as a defendant in that, and that the account in question, that the account was sued and not Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So how do you respond to this?
I couldn't control my laughter. Kiamu I'm sorry, is talking absolute rubbish. Why would he forfeit 460,000 of his hard-earned money, legitimately saved through proper procedure? That's absolute nonsense. He doesn't have to be named as defendant in a criminal proceeding. In fact, he forfeited it so he wouldn't be named. Of course, that was the deal. When the United States government pursues a crime, they grab people. As the case is going on, they're discovering more people. As they're interviewing suspects, and as suspects are making plea bargain. Because what happens in the U.S. criminal prosecutions is very interesting. They get you first. Then they ask you, cooperate with the government and we will lessen the offenses or even give you immunity from prosecution. Do you have anybody to turn in? Then you turn in more people. They give you immunity or a plea bargain. They go after the people you turned in. All of them will go through the process. They come in and say, we've got this about you. Are you ready to make a deal or do we proceed? So apparently they got to this guy and they said, hey, where did you get all this money in these accounts? Why do you have all these accounts? We think you are involved with these people. But guess what? We can just let you go if you let us have the money. He said, okay, please have the money, have the money. That's it. So Kemi is talking absolute rubbish. If he was already a defendant, we would have been talking of a different thing altogether. The deal in forfeiture proceedings of this nature is so that you don't become a defendant. They say, listen, we're going to slap you with a few charges. We know you are one of them. You are keeping their money. Listen, if you want us, we go that way. And the clever lawyer comes in and says, no. Please, back off. My client's role is very minimal. He really didn't go too far. He was just an uncle keeping money for them. He doesn't know. The government will say, but we can get something on him. Yes, but what is the point? Take the money. He's willing to let the money go. So for Keyamo to come and say he opened the account legitimately, how do you open an account illegitimately? Is it possible to open an account illegitimately? I don't know what the hell he's talking about. As if to say, going to open an account, you can open an account illegitimately. How? Maybe use false name. So what Akemi is just talking the typical nonsense Nigerian politicians will peddle here, trying to say nothing happened. A lot happened. $460,000 in 1993 was more than Tinubu earned in 20 years prior to that moment. How did he come with that money? The critical thing is, we found you with money that you could not have had unless you committed a crime. Don't forget that. It says, we found you with money you could not have had unless you committed a crime. If you dare us, we are going to probe and establish the crime you committed. But if you are willing to tuck your tail in between your legs and run and leave the money behind, we will let you go. And the guy chose to leave the money. He left the money. And Keyamo says it's dead issue. Of course, it is dead issue in the sense that nobody is saying that Tinubu should be arrested and prosecuted. Nobody is trying to say that Tinubu was convicted of a crime. Nobody is trying to say that he was charged criminally as a defendant. People are saying the truth. And the truth is that in 1993, Tinubu forfeited 460,000. That is the story. So whether it came out, it was an old document, certified now or not certified, that is immaterial. So what Keyamo is defending against is not what people are saying. Keyamo is trying to say, oh, it's an old thing. Yes, it's an old thing. Nobody's lying about the age. We know the year it happened. It was 1993. It's on the document. Keyamo said, oh, he's not a defendant. Of course, nobody said he was a defendant. And when Keyamo says it was a proceeding against property, he's misleading. Yes, it was a proceeding against property, but it was property acquired through criminal conduct. The property in question is considered proceeds of crime. The connection between that property and crime was that it came from crime, it proceeded from crime. So what is Keyamo supposed to have been a lawyer that had worked for the EFCC on a number of cases? So he now thinks, in other words, all these EFCC forfeiture cases, Keyamo can say, well, the owners of the assets being forfeited by EFCC, they are nice people, nothing, it's proceeding against property. They have no question to answer with EFCC. They did nothing wrong. EFCC is going after property. Do property drop from the sky? Human beings accumulated them. Human beings acquired the property. Human beings owned the property. So when you go after that property, you are going to reflect on the conduct of the owners of the property, how the property was acquired, what use the property was being put to. So Keyamo should stop deceiving people, suggesting that criminal proceedings against property has no implication on the owners of such property, but explicitly saying there that this money was suspected to be proceeds of crime. Okay, the crime was committed by some spirit, not a human being. Okay, the crime was committed by spirits, not a human being. However, that crime cost money to enter into the accounts owned and operated by Tinubu. I thought that Keyamo would have said that Tinubu was not the one that established the account. In fact, I was happy for him to say that. No. This was an account established by Tinubu's parents, but he inherited it. So he really didn't know what was happening there. He just inherited an account that was established by somebody. Or he didn't say that. He said Tinubu established the account in which the US government found proceeds of crime. Come on. That is more or less a confession. What Keyamo said implicates Tinubu deeper in the mind of a person of common sense, because Keyamo admitted that the accounts were established by Tinubu, they belong to Tinubu. So Keyamo confesses that the forfeiture proceeding targeted the right person, Tinubu. It wasn't somebody else's account that Tinubu was asked to explain. It wasn't somebody else's money that Tinubu was forfeiting. Tinubu forfeited the money he would have been spending on himself, his family, or doing things. Why would he do that? How did the money enter there? Savings? Savings in the United States? From what work was he saving those things? If it was savings, very simple. If it was as clean as Keyamo is making it, all Tinubu needs to do is to say, hell no, I'm not forfeiting a dime of my money. Come on, I will show you how I earned that money. So year I made X amount, I put it there. So year I made X amount, I put it there. This is how I made my money. It's all legitimate. Why am I forfeiting my life savings? But Keyamo says he forfeited his legitimately earned money. No way. Any American, any adult listening to that story is going to be shaking his head right now. You don't forfeit money you can explain. It's when you know you cannot explain it. Oh yes, but if they push it, this money is... I thought he would say, you know what I thought they would say? Okay. I thought they would say, listen, we forfeited that money. The reason I did it was that I got that money from Nigerian politicians. You know, we're trying to form a party and people contributed money into my account because we were in Adeko, you know, in 1993, we were fighting Abacha, and some people secretly contributed money. And when US government found this out, we didn't want to reveal the truth because it would implicate those who were sponsoring the insurgency. You know, we are planning a war against to overthrow Abacha, raising a government in exile, you know, for Abiola. This was money we were trying to raise to form a government in exile and form an army against Abacha. And many people contributed money. And when US government came upon us, we didn't want to reveal the identity of those contributors. In order to keep the identity secret, I have to fail to explain how the money came about. And that was why I chose a forfeiture. I don't know why these people are not intelligent. Keyamo could have told that kind of lie, and it will make some sense that they had a different reason for not wanting to explain the money. They had a different reason. It wasn't because it was a crime.
But
he could have said so.
Yeah,
but he comes here and tells us that Tinubu was saving his money, life savings, in 10 different bank accounts, in cash. We're not thinking of investment in stock everywhere, but Tinubu was saving his money in cash, in bank, 460,000 in bank.
So if I may interject here, you know, he was 7 million. I mean, there must be something doubling that money that he was saving. But again, in line with what you just said now, it will be pertinent to also inform the public and the viewing audience that Bola Ahmed Tinubu, his primary residence as of that time was in the same building with the two Akandes, of whom later pleaded guilty to selling white heroin.
You know what, sir? I was trying to avoid that. If you knew earlier that I indicated there were other Nigerians involved around that period in series of crimes, and these things don't go away fast. I got to know about these, you know, organized operations. These things that are not done in isolation. Those people were involved with him. They were friends. I don't know whether he was just so innocent that he didn't know what they were doing. He was holding their money innocently or doing something innocently. But the US Justice Department or the Treasury Department, they will not just come. They don't just act out of nothing. No, before they even move, they have watched you for a very long time. They watched them. And they zeroed in. They zeroed in. They didn't have direct evidence against Tinubu, apparently. But they found a lot of smoking guns. And they said, wait a minute, we got to get him. Hid the money. And they hid the money. So any notion that forfeiture is something that just randomly occurs, they just zero, you know, that's nonsense. It doesn't happen that way. But again, as I explained, you know, I'm not telling you that Tinubu, that I have information that he committed a particular offense. I'm not telling you that. So I'm also not telling you he was the defendant in any criminal charge. No, I'm not telling you that. All I'm telling you tonight is that honest, innocent people who earn their money legitimately will not forfeit it. They will not forfeit it at all. Indeed, they won't even ask you to forfeit your money. For them to ask you to forfeit your money is because you either, the money came from crime. You are holding money for criminals, or you are sponsoring criminal operations, or you are laundering money for them. They make the money, they pass it through you, you launder it because you're a nice guy, you are educated, you are sophisticated, and you know, you're a Nigerian politician, you're a big guy, nobody will touch you. They move money through you. Maybe that's all you know. But when they come to you and say, forfeit this money, they will explain to you why. So it's not an innocent thing. It's not a thing anybody should be proud of. It's a thing one must explain whenever the question occurs. And if you decide to run for the presidency of any country, expect that people will ask questions about any forfeiture proceeding, any any uncontested charge, any indictment, any regulatory breach. Is a thing. As an honorable person, if it happens to you, you explain it legitimately, honestly, admit where you erred. Yes, I was living with some people that were boys. I had no idea the business they were doing. I was misled. All I knew was that they felt I could hold funds for them. It was later I realized, I am sorry, I acted foolishly by trusting them, but otherwise there was nothing else. That's what somebody can explain. And then you say, well, bad choice, wrong company, wrong time. But to come and tell me that forfeiture is fun, forfeiture is something you did, casually, no, that's nonsense. Only Keyamo can say that sort of thing.
Okay, so if we, if we come down before we start winding up to the current realities of today, is it possible that this case can be revisited here, or can this case be revisited in America? Is it possible that as a result of this case, he could be disqualified from contesting the presidential election come 2023?
No, I don't think so. You have to see how messed up the Nigerian political system is. As I indicated, nobody asked me about Atiku, but I felt in fairness to Tinubu, let's not make him look like the rogue and others look like saints. No, you know me, I have nothing personal against anybody. In fairness to Tinubu, I pointed out that Atiku is in a similar mess as well. He's got questions to answer. I knew that. So you can't quite, Nigeria has far gone in the direction of infamy that they'll have to postpone the election. If at this moment you disqualify Tinubu, the proceedings, the court trials will have to lead to postponement of election. So it is a mistake realized too late. It should have been raised early. So can he be disqualified? No, partly because this occurred in a foreign jurisdiction. Also, you must understand that forfeiture is not like having a criminal record. It's not a conviction record. No, forfeiture is not a conviction record. He wasn't convicted. He wasn't tried for criminal offense. But forfeiture is forfeiture. Forfeiture is a bad thing, but not a conviction record. But even if it was a conviction record, Nigerian Constitution defining the qualifications of candidates did not mention anywhere that a person convicted overseas cannot run. So even if we were to come and say, yes, there is a conviction record against Tinubu in Chicago in 1993, that will not disqualify him. And if conviction record will not disqualify him, a forfeiture record will not disqualify him. That's not it. So, and the issue of can anybody try any of the offenses occurred in the United States? Any such offenses occurred in the United States cannot be tried in Nigeria. Now, can US try? Of course, US can try, but it has to be in the interest of the United States. Assuming now, let me give you an example. Assuming Tinubu becomes president of Nigeria and Nigeria and the United States have war, US will come up with different criminal charges against him. They did it to Noriega. They knew that Noriega was involved in drug. It was not a problem until he offended Senior Bush. When he offended Senior Bush, he had to just get him arrested try him for drug peddling. Yes. If President Tinubu annoys the United States, if President Atiku annoys the United States, they have enough information to prosecute them criminally if they want to. And that is the problem. That is the problem. That you cannot have candidates who face such exposure. That's the problem.
Now, there are people who have, there are people who are insinuating and wanting to take a class action suit regarding this particular document. Now, from your vintage point, as someone who had represented the Nigerian government in America for over 10 years, do you think that such action is an effort in futility?
Yes, it is an effort in futility legally, but it could have political implications. Of course, if you have class action suggests gathering a whole lot of people, thousands of people perhaps, who come out and seek judicial intervention on a matter. So the fact that you have so many people against you seeking, pushing for that cause, it hurts any politician, really, because politicians are seeking votes, seeking support. But as to whether a judge is going to result in a judicial decision that will disqualify, no. You have to have, whether it's a class action lawsuit or individual lawsuit, you have to have a justifiable legal basis, a justiciable, not justifiable, justiciable legal basis. Justiciable means that you can capture your grievance in such a manner that you can present it in court of law and obtain a relief from court of law. That is justiciability. So such action lacks justiciability for that reason. However, it is a form of rallying point, a galvanization of the population against a candidate, pointing to the shortcomings of that candidate. So if you do anything, or rather anything you do that causes a candidate to lose votes, that is certainly effective politically. If you can get everybody to believe that that Tinubu has a case to answer, has criminal activity to, it hurts him. Just as the story has gone that he's too old or too sick, they use those things. Of course, I don't think he's as sick as they say he is. I don't think he's as old as say he is, but it is hurting him badly. Everybody had some kind of idea that Tinubu's hand is shaking or has Parkinson's disease or whatever, which is not true. Which is not true, really. But it hurts him. It hurts him.
If you say, I mean, what else could make those hands shake in that manner that was visible during in the night of the APC presidential primary? So what can you say?
Well, let me tell you something, honestly speaking. I watched Tinubu when he came to the house of Ezeoke to meet his mom. The Tinubu I saw there was agile. He was able to touch the ground, bend down. You know what it is? At 60, to touch the ground. He bent sharply, touched the ground, and stood up. So the Tinubu I saw there is, for me, the Tinubu there is. So he's agile, he's active. So you can use camera to make people's hands shake. You can put people in slow motion or fast motion or whatever it is. But to tell you the truth, it is working against him.
Sorry, barrister. In the legal field is your field. You've come into a video motion, which is my field.
No, so I just gotta give you my opinion. The law,
that was a live stream. That was a live stream by the Nigerian Television Authority. I believe no one was in the studio to edit anything.
Perhaps I didn't watch that one. But I'm just trying to tell you. How any information out there can favor a person politically, regardless of whether it favors illegally. A class action lawsuit, any lawsuit of any sort against any candidate is not in the interest of that candidate. So it will have effect. A class action lawsuit hammering on criminal conduct, hammering on criminal record, it will hurt him. badly, badly. But whether we are going to get a judgment of any court in Nigeria saying that because of what happened in the United States in 1993, Tinubu is no longer a candidate, that's not going to happen.
Wow. Wow. Barrister Emeka Ugwuonye, it has been a very, very enlightening evening with you. You know, you really, really thrown some light and have explained some of these things that, Festus Keyamo actually talked about. Now, in that conversation, professionally speaking, if you watch that conversation with Sheung Okimbaloye, at some point, he asks, Sheung, go and get your pen. Let me teach you. Do you think that such demurs, an interview, legally speaking, as a colleague of yours in the legal world, do you think that such is a manner of speaking in public and addressing issues?
No, well, you know what happens when when a lawyer enters a field that is not his, but continues to push his legal credentials in that field. You will have a situation as we have with Keyamo. Let's make no mistake, you have to look at everybody's past and their history and how they emerged. Keyamo is not known for intelligence, really. He doesn't project it, he doesn't know it, especially this argument. So it is a relatively minor infraction that he was rude to show. It was unbecoming, but it's not a more serious question that boggles the mind is when you put a person who holds himself out as a senior lawyer in Nigeria, and he comes out trying to make forfeiture look like a tea party, trying to make it something, a badge of honor that Tinubu should wear on his shoulders, trying to use the forfeiture as evidence of innocence. That is more troubling, really. The minor rudeness to show, you can dismiss it and say he was a politician speaking in political circumstance and the political situation rather than a lawyer expounding on law. I will judge Keyamo on law, and I will score him 0. I'm afraid. So on ethics, I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't waste my time judging him on ethics. But on the question of whether a forfeiture was a dent, it was a big dent. It could have been explained better if Keyamo was smarter or if Keyamo understood what it was about. But he didn't explain it. He wanted us to, indeed, he convicted Tinubu. Keyamo's explanation hurt Tinubu more because Keyamo's explanation admitted that Tinubu opened those accounts. Keyamo's explanation also said it was his savings account. so 10 savings account, and Keyamo's, even people who run POS, there was no POS then, but even people who run POS business don't have 10 accounts, okay, where they put their money. So Keyamo's explanation would have caused anybody who wasn't interested in the story before to say, wait a minute, what the hell is this guy talking about? That is exactly what comes out after listening to Keyamo.
Thank you very much for being our guest this evening. And once more, everyone watching, it has been a wonderful time for the past hour and 5 minutes speaking to Barrister Emeka Ugwuonye, who is the principal partner at Equulaw. And as you may also, and as I have said at the beginning, Barrister Emeka Ugwuonye represented the Nigerian government in the United States of America for over 10 years. The reason why we invited him, he is someone who has also practiced in the United States with, with that legal knowledge. Hence, inviting you to help us get better perspective regarding what Festus Keyamo said. But here, in conclusion, you said that he actually spoke arrant nonsense. Those are your words. That Festus Kayamo spoke nonsense. So let's leave it at that. Thank you very much. It has been my pleasure to have you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for
Thank you
inviting me.
very much. Okay. Bye for now.